Oh, and here I am.
You're here, and that's I was a little worried. I'm like, where?
No, I was coming. If I had to jog to Iowa, I was gonna make it. One way or another, I was gonna be there.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Yeah, Jill, I saw her earlier in another session, so hopefully she'll be arriving soon. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Maybe she's having a similar
Okay.
issue.
No. I think I just deal with general technical incompetence. That may not be her problem at all.
Right on. Well, I'll keep an eye on my emails in case I get like an emergency, like help. And I can.
Okay.
Right on. Well, it's so great to see you. I'm so glad you.
Yeah, it's great. It's a pleasure to be here. I regret that we can't do all these things in person, of course.
I know. I feel the same way, and we've been trying to obviously. Oh, did I come in the wrong door? It's okay. I see Jill, and I think I can make you, Jill, hold on just a minute.
Oh,
You did come in the wrong door, Jill, but I can get you.
Well, do whatever you need to do, man. I am okay. You can hear me okay?
Yes, I can, absolutely. All right.
I'll be right back. 2 seconds.
All right, no problem.
Fabulous. You know what I did?
What's that?
Instead of clicking the link in my email, I just wrote down the number so that my email wouldn't keep dinging.
Gotcha. You made it though.
I know I can get here and then close the email. I did it backwards, but whew, I'm here.
Perfect. I know. Well, we'll get started in just a minute. We got
Isabella never showed up.
Oh, I know. She warned me that it may or may not happen, and I sent so many reminders, but she never.
Okay.
I don't know, but Bailey did, and I hope you had a good conversation.
Yes, we did. We did. She's lovely. We had a great conversation.
Awesome. Very cool. So Tim is just we'll be right back, and we got still some people coming in the door, but we'll do some introductions in just a second here.
And how long did you want us to read a little, or is it all conversation and Q&A?
Yeah, read a little would be great. Yeah, so about 15 minutes, 10, 15.
Oh, okay.
Minutes or so. Absolutely, yeah. So about 15 minutes a piece is what we tend to.
Okay,
Not that
perfect.
we don't have a timer going or anything, so it's not like a big deal.
But hey, Jill, how you doing?
Hi, Tim. Good to see you.
To you, yes. But Mark, tell me, we'll get the conversation. We chat first, and then we read. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely. Then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So.
Great.
Gotcha.
Well, maybe we'll just go ahead and get started. Then I want to thank everybody for being here, and I appreciate you guys coming. We've tried to have Tim and Jill last year, but of course we had a pandemic on our hands that had to cancel, but they were generous enough to reschedule to come again this year. So I feel like we've been in conversation for a long time now. I'm so glad that we can.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So glad it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to thank everybody for being here, and we want to give you a little bit of setup about how the hour is going to go. You might have overheard us talking earlier that we'll have a little introduction and a conversation about their work, and then we will be able to hear them read for about 15 minutes a piece, and then we'll end with you guys. So what I wanted to instruct you guys is that you have a chat here, which you see is already operating, and as I've said every week, we've had some interesting conversations in the chat as people have been reading and asking questions or relating to some of the things that the authors have been saying. So feel free to just chime in as the reading progresses. But more importantly, we have a Q&A Dropbox. So anytime over the course of the hour you have a question or something that you would like the authors to address, please put it in at any time, and I'll try to get to as many as I can before the hour is over. We'll spend the last 15 minutes or so looking at your Q&A and trying to get as many questions in as possible. Absolutely. So we'll start with some introductions, and today with us we have we start off with, we'll have Jill McCorkle, and she has published 10 books, 6 novels, and 4 collections of short stories. And her work has appeared in Best American Short Stories several times, as well as the Norton Anthology of Short Fiction. 5 of her books have been New York Times notable books, and her novel Life After Life was a New York Times bestseller. She has received the New England Booksellers Award, the John Dos Passos Prize for Excellence in Literature, and the North Carolina Award for Literature. She has written for the New York Times Book Review, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, the Atlantic, and other publications. She was a Briggs Copeland Lecturer in Fiction at Harvard, where she also chaired the Department of Creative Writing. She is currently a faculty member of the Bennington College Writing Seminars and is affiliated with the MFA program at North Carolina State University. Joining her is Tim Siebels, is the author of 6 collections of poetry, including Body Moves, Hurdy-Gurdy, Hammerlock, Buffalo Head Solos, and Fast Animal, which won the Theodore Roethke Memorial Poetry Prize, received the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Award, and was nominated for the 2012 National Book Award. His latest work of poetry, One Turn Around the Sun, was published by Etruscan Press in 2017. His poems have been published in the Indiana Review, Black Renaissance Noir, Cortland Review, Plowshares, Massachusetts Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, and numerous other journals, anthologies, including Best American Poetry. And he is a professor emeritus at Old Dominion University and lives in Virginia. So I just wanted to thank you again for joining us for the hour. And after reading your bios and seeing how prolific your work is, I was mentioning to Jill earlier that we've had some writers in our series this year who've published their first book and are just getting started in their careers. And you guys are obviously well established. And I'm curious about how maybe your work has changed from when you started writing and publishing to your latest work now, how the themes have changed or your approach to writing, or maybe even like how your process has changed at all over the course of your career. Jill, would you like to start maybe?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely think though there are themes that run through all the work. I think a lot has changed. My process went from, sort of having it all mapped out that I needed to work this many hours at this time, blah, blah. All of that just got thrown to the wind when my first child was born 33 years ago, and I became a compulsive note taker, realizing that if I was going to continue in this business, both as teacher and writer and juggling the two, that I had to be a lot more portable. And so I went back to writing longhand a lot, which I love and still do. And I just take notes all through the day, and I'm always saving up for that bigger block of time, the holiday, the weekend, the summer stretch, that really allows me to pull bigger pieces together. And I think that over the years I have become, for lack of a better word, maybe a braver writer. I think sometimes there were topics that I would flirt around, and I love humor, and I always try to mine humor when I can. But I think that in the early years, I relied more on humor than I maybe do now. I think I've been a little braver about going into dark corners, and maybe that too has to do with getting older, and the people who would read it and scold you for putting it in print are not necessarily around to do it. I don't know what what prompts it, but that is a change for sure.
Very interesting. As you get older, you can kind of give yourself permission to take more risks, and I love that idea. And we also have many working students and students who are also parents. So it's really helpful advice to talk about how do you negotiate, these two worlds and still claim yourself as a writer. It's great. Tim, would you like to add on to that?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to say how my process has changed. I think the one thing that happens, and I imagine this may be true for Jill as well, and maybe for many writers, as you get older and you've written longer, your expectations keep getting higher. So you know more about writing. You've read many more writers. You've been around other writers, and as a consequence, I think you think, I must be better. I must do more. I must work harder. And so that's one thing. I think in terms of, for example, revision, I think I'm much more meticulous about revision. Now, if you had asked me 30 years ago, did I feel I was being careful when I revised, I would have said yes. I mean, I don't think I was ever just haphazardly, tossing words about. But I just think because I understand a little bit more about composition, and I've read more, I can see more clearly into what I've been trying to do, or what I am trying to do as a writer, and that makes me, I like to think a tougher self-critic. So that's one thing that's changed. But in part, following up on what Jill said about getting older, you lose people. Some of the faith, hopefully not all of it, but some of the faith you had in life and in your fellow citizens kind of gets eroded. I mean, I feel I'm far from being cynical. I love people. I believe in life. I believe in the possibilities of humanity. I do. But boy, sometimes it shakes you up, some of the things that your fellow citizens are capable of. And it's maybe a little harder to avoid the dark corners. I think when I was younger, I mean, yeah, I might have written some poems that certainly might have had sharp edges politically or something, but just in terms of the solitary aspects of being a person, you live long enough, you lose friends to mortality. I just recently lost both of my parents, and I just think there's a lengthening shadow that overtakes you a bit, and as a consequence, I think you do write with maybe a hand that's more somber, and maybe melancholy begins to occupy a larger part of your sensibility. I still love play and humor, and I still believe in many things that are not about despair, but I do think some anxiety and anguish have made a mark on me that I can't fully shed, I think. Those are some of the things that I've felt over the years anyway.
Now, this makes me think about both of your guys' latest works. For Tim, One Turn Around the Sun, which was published a few years ago. And then for Jill, just this summer, I believe, was Hieroglyphics, your latest novel. And both of them actually deal with what you guys are mentioning. It's this idea of like looking back and looking at memory. And I know that Tim, you write like memory poems, thinking about former loves or friends or your former self, really. And
Absolutely.
Jill, in particular, you have giant sections of your book that are literally like an excavation of memory. So I'm kind of curious about how the memory or the past plays into your work, or how do you approach it in your writing, without it just becoming like a memoir or like a journal entry. And how do you play with memory in your work? Jill, would you like to start us off maybe?
Sure. I think I have just always been drawn to memory. I know I once heard the late writer Barry Hannah once say that Southern children are nostalgic by the age of 8. And I actually think it's all children. I think it's not just people in the South. I think that children love to hear stories about themselves, and and I was always very interested in the history of those who had come before me, and so always drawn to memory. I think the biggest problem I've had as a writer often is finding the present day plot to hang the memory on. I'm really interested in those memories that change us, shape us, what Tim was just saying. I mean, you lose important people in your life, or something occurs, and we are changed. We are changed by grief. We're changed by joy. And so I'm really interested in the process of how a life plays out. So yeah, I mean, for me, the big problem is finding that present line to hang it on. I've had so many colleagues, who say to students, no backstory, no backstory. And I'm always the one saying, no, what about, there's got to be a story behind this. I'm always sort of digging and looking for what happened just before the photograph was taken. But
Yeah, that's interesting. Tim, would you like to add on to that?
Oh yeah, well, I think even when I was in my 20s, I was always fascinated by what I remembered about things. And at the time, I just thought that's how people were. Like, one, like everyone else, I think about memories. But I recall having a close friend who once tell me, probably I was maybe in my late 20s, and she said, "You think about memory all the time." And I thought, well, doesn't everybody? I mean, I just figure it's always been a factor in my life. I'm not sure exactly why. I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm not a Southerner by birth anyway, but I've lived in the South a lot. I just think the present is this kind of amorphous place. We don't, I mean, it's hard to speak with much authority about what is in process of happening, and the future, of course, does not quite exist. And so the memory, even though it becomes, of course, distorted in various ways because of, we're living with our feelings about the memories. So we probably, do some, I don't know, what would you say? I imagine we doctor our memories in various ways. In my heart of hearts, I like to think I remember things exactly as they were, but that's probably not true. But your memories are the things that have brought you to this very moment. And so for me, there's a dramatic intensity built into the idea of memory insofar as each memory is a kind of a building block of you, right? It's a piece of you that you've carried forward in one way or another. So it always fascinated me to talk about things, and also um, in remembering things in a poem, for example, or in stories, whatever. I read all kinds of stuff. Um, you can relive things again. When I write a poem about being a teenager, a lot of things kind of light up in my brain about that particular time, and there's a pleasure in that. And if I read a book in which someone else is um, addressing memory, well, their memories trigger memories of mine. And so there's a pleasure in that as well. So I'm not sure. I mean, in a nutshell, the past is what we have for sure. The present is a blur, and the future, is nothing. So I think that's probably what compels me about the past.
Absolutely. Very cool. So we've been reading your stuff in in my classes, and we've been talking a lot about, we're kind of changing gears here a little bit, about form a lot and thinking about the structure of your work. So maybe we'll start off with Tim and thinking about how you often use traditional forms, such as like the villanelle. You often use and kind of reinvent, and you seem to be drawn towards persona poems often. And I'm just kind of curious about how you approach form, whether it be traditional or not, in your work, and how do you see it speaking to some of the things that you want to say?
Yeah. Well, I've always loved villanelles. I mean, years before I ever wrote a villanelle, I loved villanelles. I'm not even sure I thought I would ever write a villanelle. But I did write one years and years and years ago. It was in my very first book, and I liked it. And then there had to be at least a decade after that, and I never wrote one. I mean, I don't know. I liked the form, but I didn't think about it. But you run into different poems and poets, and you read things by people, and you think, man, I really like that form. Maybe I'll write one again or something. And so the villanelle kind of, I don't know, it just snuck up on me again. I mean, I've been probably written in the last 2 or 3 years, maybe 30 or 40. I've really been writing a lot of them. This is not to say they are all as accomplished as they might be, but I really am fascinated by it. And in part, it's because when you're dealing with a regular meter and rhyme scheme, it approaches song, right? It approaches the kind of lyricism that we hear when people sing, right? And so there's something about that. And I think about villanelles. Lately I've been calling my villanelles blues villanelles. I think you probably saw that in One Turn.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I like the idea that, a villanelle is kind of like I don't know, upper or a more heady version of a bar song or something. I love that idea. And because you're dealing with a limited number of lines, even though I've expanded the form from 19 lines to 25, you're still, you gotta kind of stay in the strapped into the seat. You can't just kind of fly off.
Mhm.
And there's something to that. There's something about the intensity that's required to say something and to complement what you're thinking with repeating lines. There's something about that. There's something singerly about it, but there's also an intensity about it that I really like in the villanelle. But with regard to persona, I mean, I just love the idea of wearing masks. And even though it's not exactly me, I suppose, in the persona, of course, you adapt personas because they fascinate you for some reason or other. So you are speaking, even though you are translating some of your own sensibility through someone else's vision. In some cases, for me, cartoon characters, um, there's something about it. There's something freeing about it. You get to play in a way that you might not if you were using your own quote unquote own voice. There's that, and you can also go into dark places or difficult places because it's persona.
Yeah.
I might read one. I've written a series of MAGA hat personas,
Yeah.
and there's certain ideas or perspectives that certainly wouldn't be mine, but they're compelling in the way that a kind of a car accident is compelling.
Right.
So those are some of the things that I think about when I'm working on persona. And the villanelle, as I said, it's kind of playful, like a kind of serious bar song to me.
Yeah. No, I like this idea of like persona. You get a little bit of distance, I guess, from topics that you can
Sure.
kind of like fiction almost. And then,
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely like creating a character. Absolutely, except that you don't get the depth and the breadth of character development that Jill would work with. For example, I'm not
right.
say that I do exactly what the novelists do, and that is not what I do. I do something like a distillation of character and voice.
Mhm.
That's a little different, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Mhm.
love your idea about blurring those lines too, because I think about the villanelle, you said like O'Hetty or whatever. But I'm like, I feel like the villanelle is like a French form, like a European form, and the
Mhm.
blues is obviously like more of like an African American influenced
Right.
genre. And you're like, I love the idea of like blurring those two,
Yeah. Well,
cross cultural.
they both originate in the songs of peasants, working peasants.
Mm,
To my understanding, the villanelle develops as Italian peasants are working in the fields. They're singing these patterns, right? And I think maybe a French poet borrowed that pattern and turned it into a literary form. And it's similarly with the blues. The blues originates out of field hollers, which are the kind of singing that Black American slaves did, before emancipation. And so the blues emerges from that, and the villanelle emerges, of course, from another kind of labor by people who didn't have much and didn't have much control over their lives. So the
mm,
Italian peasants, I do not imagine. I don't think they saw themselves as slaves exactly, but certainly peasants were not people who had much power over their lives. So they probably had many things in common with folks who were in fact slaves.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. I love that comparison. And speaking of persona and fiction and point of view, Jill, you often, especially in this latest novel, the whole thing is written from multiple points of view, has a kind of, it creates an omniscience by using all these points of view. And you move back and forth through time constantly, sometimes within the same sentence. I was kind of curious about your style and how you use form and how you juggle all those points of view.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I just love sitting here listening to Tim talk, because I feel like, so many, we're doing so many of the same things, but I feel like my process is like the reverse. I have all this language, and I'm in search of the form that best puts it to use. And so as scary as it sounds, I often find myself with just a whole pile of stuff. It's like dumping out the 1,000-piece puzzle and then wondering how it fits together. And I really start looking for repetitions and echoes between characters, and so to let that somehow guide me as to putting them together. So for instance, in this novel, I have 4 point of view characters, husband and wife who are in their 80s. And then I have a kid, Harvey, who's 6, his mother, Shelley, who is kind of at wit's end and in a terrible place in life. She's pretty frazzled. And I've kept working, just committed to the fact that all these people belonged in the same novel, yet I really could not for the life of me figure out why, except that it's a lot about parent-child relationships. And so finally, I had made the husband, Frank. I did that thing that makes work so difficult. I chose a character who's far smarter than I will ever be, and so I have this man who had taught archaeology for all these years. And so I was having to do my research, and the day it occurred to me that the whole connection, the cog in this wheel, was that the little boy, Harvey, and his mother are in the house where Frank spent some time as a boy. So literally, Harvey is growing up right on top of where Frank grew up. So if you were doing the dig, their boyhoods are stacked. And as soon as I knew that, it was able, I was better able to put the pieces together. And I sort of knew then that the drive was all about, I start having Frank circle the house because he wants to come in and revisit all these memories and see if he remembered it right, what we were just talking about. And then that provided suspense within Harvey and Shelley's home, that there's this old man riding around, and I knew that eventually the two would come together. And so, it just feels, as they say, bass backwards, that I had to just like go all around the world to find the storyline. But I have found, again, things that have changed over time. I think somehow my work has become more and more fragmented, because I am interested in those little pieces of life that get lost along the way. I'm really interested in everyday life. I think when all is said and done, like this pandemic year, what do we miss? I mean, for the longest time, I missed just sort of hanging out in the grocery store and talking to people I really don't know, or going to a movie theater, or all those things we take for granted. And I'm fascinated because I really think that as we pull into the last station, those are the things we long for most, all those little tiny pieces of our very normal days.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love your approach. We've talked to other writers who are like, I outline everything and I have everything planned out. And you're more of like, you find these fragments, like you say, and you try to find the connections, and you excavate your own novel.
It's a mess. It's a mess much of the time.
I think that's encouraging to a lot of people. We have people in the chat like, I can relate to
I
the mess.
hope it's encouraging. Yes.
Can we hear a little bit from both of your works? Maybe Jill, would you like to read for about, I don't know, 10 minutes or 15 about a passage from your work?
And since we've been talking about this, I thought that I would read from my character, Lil, who is in her 80s, and she's probably the person occupying the most space. And she's the only one in first person, and it's because she is excavating her own life. She's going through journals and notes, and she's basically deciding what she does and does not want her children to know someday. So she's kind of taking liberties to edit life a little bit. So this is Lil. We all are haunted by something we did or didn't do, and the passing years either add to the weight or diminish it. Mine have diminished, perhaps because I've spent time thinking about it all. It might sound silly, but I see these bits and pieces as my contribution to evolution, the unearthing and dusting of the prints and markers that led me here. Some seem to bulldoze right through life and up to their headstones, but I want to take my time. I want to find the right words. I imagine my recipient to be you two, or perhaps your children, and I hope this is so, rather than some stranger who comes in and hoists old boxes into a dumpster or rakes away the remainders of my life like the sad debris in the aftermath of a flood or fire. I'll never get over the sight of what we left behind at our home of over 50 years to move down here. A mountain of cast-off things, old towels and linens, papers and books and shoes and pots, side tables and lamps, hoses and hose, packets of seeds I meant to plant, and a rubber squeak toy that had been safely hidden away in the back of my closet by one of the dogs long dead, and so much more. Things not needed, things long forgotten, cans of cream of whatever soup and V8 juice, why, and peace that had sat there forgotten for years, and things that never should have been there in the first place, like tuna helper, or those things in my closet, like that geometric print mini dress I bought in the 60s, hoping to look like Petula Clark or Judy Carn, a perky pixie kind of dress that I never had the nerve to wear, and instead looked at it there at the back of the closet for years, along with a wiglet and a long frosted fall and some jackets with shoulders resembling a football player or Victorian monarch. We divided it all into goodwill, consignment, recycle, landfill. But there were also the things I couldn't let go of, letters, reminders, souvenirs, and I'm taking my time, relieved when I find something that might have gotten lost in that mountain of debris, like one of your drawings from first grade, or the stub from a movie I'd forgotten I even saw, or a note from my father. When the moving van pulled away that afternoon and we got in the car and turned southward, the space within seemed so empty, vacant. Our suitcases and silver chest in the trunk, an overnight bag and thermos of coffee on the back seat. And I had that terrible feeling that I had forgotten something, because I was thinking of all the times the car was filled with you two, your belongings, your music and voices, the dogs, while going to school or on vacation or just to the grocery store, where I bought all of those things that I then put on the shelf there in our dimly lit pantry on the red gingham contact paper I spent one snowy afternoon 40 years ago cutting and sticking in place all those things that I placed there and then forgot about. In short, I'm homesick and I'm time sick. I would be lying not to say that. It's possible to feel content and resolved and still be homesick. I miss all that no longer is, which is why I paste and piece all these scraps together. Sometimes I hold a ticket or photo, a piece of paper, while willing myself back to where I first held it. I know that might sound silly, but it's what I do. I want to hear your young voices, the dog scratching to come in. I want to call my father on the telephone, finger in that rotary dial one number at a time, TW3 3642. Let me take this playbill and arrive at the theater, or this receipt and find myself there in the produce aisle of Star Market. Then after the show, after I check out, after I sit and let the car warm up, I drive those familiar streets home and find everything just as I left it, the kitchen door creaking behind me. And I'll shift gears and go to the other end and just read a little introduction to the kid Harvey, who's 6. Harvey would be scared at night if he didn't have Peggy. She's fat and warm and she snores, and sometimes her paws move like she's chasing something, like she will chase something if she needs to, and Harvey wakes her up to tell her to do it. But sometimes Harvey is the only one awake, and so he whispers in Peggy's ear to wake up, just to make sure she will do it when he needs her to. Her ear stinks a little in a good way, like how her neck smells up under her collar, kind of like the school cafeteria and those big rolls on spaghetti day. His teacher held one up to the principal and said, "Do you think we feed these children enough starch? And does this sauce really count as a vegetable? Really?" Harvey's teacher said, "Really, really," when she thought you were lying. "So you already did your work," she would say. "Really? You really want me to believe that?" And they did want her to believe that, because she's the youngest teacher at the school and has a convertible and a boyfriend that makes beer. Somebody asked, did her boyfriend know she always eats lunch with Mr. Stone, the man who teaches 2nd grade and runs the summer camp Harvey's mom is making him go to? The same kid asked, why didn't she dump her boyfriend and just go with Mr. Stone? She already has everything anybody could want, a car and a dog, a pit bull mix named Susie, but Mr. Stone can dance and he wears cool shoes. Harvey kisses Peggy and smells inside her big soft ear. He keeps his eyes closed and pulls Peggy tight when he hears the back door open and close. He knew it would. Peggy doesn't wake up, and Harvey's mom doesn't wake up. Just Harvey knows someone's in the house and in the hall, and whoever it is stops and stands in the door, just like last time. He wants to look, but is scared to, because there's some ghost that'll blind you for looking and cut out your tongue too. So he just breathes real quiet into Peggy's soft ear and waits.
So wonderful. Thank you so much. I love the way you're talking about like excavation and memory and such. The way that your characters like spin out and they kind of like have like it reminds me of like Virginia Woolf or like Proust, where you just kind of had these memories build and build, and you never know where they're going, and then they locate themselves. It's really neat.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Tim, would you like to share some of your work with us, please? Oh, I think is your mic not working?
Not on. Sorry, am I on now?
Yeah, you are.
Anyway, but with regard to what Jill just did, it's like the thing is, I mean, and I aspire to this too as a poet, and I imagine all writers we probably all hold hands in this, is that you're aspiring to I mean, we know that a novel or a short story or a poem is a made thing, that people don't walk around thinking like novels exactly, but there's a way in which even though we know they're made things, what you're hoping is that someone will recognize some aspect of their minds in these characters or in the voice, because that's what makes the work resonate. Someone says, I understand that. I feel with that voice. So you're not, because if you're only a spectator as a reader, there's not that much to that, but there has to be a sense that your mind, to some extent, your mind and heart are joining with the character or with a voice, Anyway, okay, that's what I was thinking about when Jill was reading. I thought, yeah, you start to identify with the character or identify with a kind of thinking, a way of thinking or something. Anyway, I don't want to ramble like a madman. Okay, let me just read a few poems. I'll try to read some things that cover some of the territory we talked about. Um, All right, I'll start with this poem. Yeah, that'll be good. This is a poem. This would be a poem. I'll read this poem. This is a poem that I would guess would be closer to quote unquote my voice. And then I'll read a persona poem, and then maybe you'll see what I'm talking about when you try to move from your own sensibility into another sensibility. This is called Twin Stranger. A few hours ago, a man some call mentally challenged told me about his pulled tooth. Still hurts bad, he said. People walked by, lean shadows cursive in the late sun. This man, white, maybe 40, spoke as though he knew me, as if I should know a way to stop the pain. I'd seen him around, unsure in the crosswalk, nursing free cocoa in the coffee shop. Said hello a couple times. His eyes held that first ache, that hope we hold before time turns our heads. And I understood for a moment my life in his, what it means to walk the earth, confused by the way things are, having no idea really what to do or who to ask. And this is one of the MAGA Hat series. And this is called Strategy. MAGA Hat 3, Strategy. You plant seeds so something will grow. At some point, you want your plate full, right? You have to anticipate, plan ahead. You think pride is different than corn? You reap what you sow, like the Bible says. Once upon a time, we owned everything, even basketball. But we got fat, got soft, equality. Now you have miscegenation everywhere. Just think about that. If you fear winter, don't wait till December to start chopping wood. And there's been a cold front since the 60s, since the hippies and Dr. Kuhn. But springtime is coming. Feel that balmy breeze. Look after where you live. See about it and be about it, I always say. What we've planted will decide how we'll eat, just like yesterday grew from all the yesterdays preceding. You don't really think American history happened by accident, as if the forefathers didn't mean to do what they did. They meant it, and they meant for us to follow their lead. Did they ever mention the virtues of diversity? To say it simply, some lives matter a lot more than others. We have to remember who does and who don't. People are scared, like always, and memory is a comfort. Them good old days right around the corner. Liberals and mud people see Trump and wonder how that got inside the White House. They've got no sense of the long term, the work required to bring the harvest. The Donald is a seed. They think today started this morning. Anyway, this is a poem called With No Hat, and it's a poem in which the title goes right into the body of the poem. And I've done a series of these poems in which the poem itself is a character in the poem. With no hat, no shirt, no pants, the poem walks the early afternoon. Summer sun spots the odd shape on the road and offers a cloud for shade. The poem is headed downtown with its revelations, its beauty, all the intricate parts, finally open to the general public, who, though they tried to deny it, have always wanted to see beneath the vintage clothes. The poem's previous modesty and stealth, its humility and restraint, its patient, soft-spoken invitations have served no one really, not even the poem itself, which has always wanted the spotlight. The red carpet, the sequin gown, the top hat, velvet lapels, ruby slippers, all its big front teeth inlaid with gold. The first people the poem passes look away, look again, their hope swelling like a fresh bump on the head. One man tries 911, but the 9 skips, then shimmies like a new disciple. And the brother's big fro bursts into cotton candy. The poem loves it, loves being out, being seen. The almost cool walk flips into a Denzel stroll. I'm kicking new flavor in your ear, it says unquietly, meeting the eyes of drivers who swerve, so sure they see what must be a mirage. This buck-naked angel rump-shaken beside the witless sprawl of their lives, their heads anointed with apocryphal music. The cars refuse the road, their horns reborn, scatting a fanfare of funkadelic clarinets. This is my body, the poem says. Take and eat. And here's a villanelle, one of the ones we talked a little bit about form. This is called Sometimes Freddie Blues Villanelle, and it's dedicated to Freddie Porter, a kid I knew when I was a teenager. Sometimes Freddie would talk to the trees, and the brothers would just laugh half the time. But a few of them said, "Have mercy on me." Think about all that good sunlight you see, yet somehow the days peel away like rind. Mostly Freddie just talked to the trees. Branches say something when they shake in the breeze. Believe what you want, but it could be a sign. Maybe they're saying, "Have mercy on me." Sundays I sit with a brain full of fleas and listen to people speak for the divine. Wish they would go and just talk to the trees. Hiding a scream is like holding a sneeze. It's all you can do not to lose your damn mind. I see why people say, "Have mercy on me." I'm starting to list like a ship in rough seas. I guess you just have to laugh half the time and think about Freddie and walk with the trees. I look at my watch, but my watch is a tease. Or maybe it's always 9:15. Them thin little hands have mercy on me. Think about SpongeBob and his home in the sea. Wouldn't you visit if you had the time? Sometimes Freddie would talk to the trees. You can see why I say mercy, mercy on me. And this is a poem called The Dollars. And I'll end with this because I know that our time is a little tight. So I end with this so we can, have some Q&A if people want to ask questions. It's called The Dollars, and there's an epigraph. It says, I'm all in. Do they own you? Do they make you do whatever they want? Do they own you? Do you work and pay and work? Are you nervous? Is it hard to sleep? Do they own you? Was it hard to wake up? What about your hair? Does it keep happening? Are you doing your best? Do you need a little something? Are you dressed? Are you getting dressed? Are you almost dressed? What about your hair? Are you tired? Are you hard to wake up? What time is it? How about now? Do they need more? Did they make you over? Are you half dressed? Do they own you? Do you think what you're supposed to? Are you saving? Who are you saving? Are you nervous? Are they watching? Is it hard? Do you ever wake up? Do they own you? Do you wake up when they want you to? Are they everywhere? Are you on time? How about now? How about now? Do you do the work? Did you do the do? Did they do you? Are you trying to get dressed? Are you? Did you? Will you? Do they own you? Do they still own you?
Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, so we were talking about form earlier, and somebody in our Q&A had a similar question. Actually, we had a few questions like this, so maybe I can conflate them. It says, question to both. When working on a piece, does the subject matter, or maybe the character or voice or whatever, influence the form more often than not? Or do you usually have an idea of how a piece should be structured or written, and you start there and that informs the subject matter? I guess we're trying to think about chicken or egg kind of thing. Do you have a structure, a voice, and then you follow that to have the content, or do you have an idea of let the structure imitate the form? I guess so. We're just thinking about where you maybe start. And he also had a follow-up saying, like, does it change as things progress? Maybe we'll begin with Tim.
Sure. It depends. I mean, sometimes a poem will just start with a line, like you'll hear a line, and maybe it just happens to be 10 syllables long. And you think, could that be a repeating line for Villanelle? And so I'll write it down. If it seems to have some kind of resonance, I'll write it down. And if I can come up with a companion repeating line, maybe we have something. But sometimes you stumble into it. You have no idea where a Villanelle comes from. You just stumble into it and you think, you know what, this should be a Villanelle. And then you work that way, work something that wasn't initially considered formal, and you work it back into something that's more, a strict form. With regard to free verse, well, that's of course completely wide open. Then you're listening. You're always listening, and if you hear a line, I try to sit down most mornings and write a little. It's been difficult during the pandemic because I can't leave the house, which I love to go and sit somewhere and just write. But anyway, But oftentimes over the years, I have just, you sit and you just wait and you just see if something occurs to you that seems to stick in your heart in some way. And then you try to work from there. And if you're patient, usually, the real meat of it will come to you and you'll be able to find what I would consider the heart of the poem, or really be inside the voice that you've discovered. But it's really wide open in terms of how something starts and how it is resolved. It's really wide open. I think part of we talked earlier about changing as you get older, and I think if anything, perhaps as I've gotten older, I've become more receptive. You just try to listen better, and you try to approach everything more patiently.
Yeah, that's great advice. And for Jill, who kind of embraces the mess, how does structure and form work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for, I think the best way to showcase a voice or to tell the story I'm interested in telling. I always ask students, when I'm reading a piece and all of a sudden the point of view shifts, my question is always, what am I learning from this shift that I can't know otherwise? So and you might have somebody say, oh, well, I wanted to have 3 points of view, but to my mind, there needs to be a good reason for the shift. And so sometimes I might begin by thinking, oh, I really want to have X points of view because I want a whole community. But then it has to make sense, that shift has occurred. And so, I'm getting a little off trail here, but, my big thing with fiction is that, the whole trick, if there's a trick, is that you get to this wonderful point where you kind of go, oh, and you gasp because you see the end or you see the turn. But at the same moment, it's very important that what immediately comes to your mind are the stepping stones of logic that led you there. That wonderful moment where you're both shocked or surprised, and you also think, why didn't I see that coming? And I sometimes we surprise ourselves with what stones appear to lead us somewhere. Other times we all of a sudden know the answer, but we have to go back and make sure that you can get there, that you can get from one point to the next. I also just want to say, Tim, thank you. That was just an absolutely brilliant journey you just took us.
Thank you.
Speaking of steps, but so more times than not, I'm looking for the right form. I'm such a believer in revision. For me, revision is the real art. That messy first draft is the big old hunk of clay on the table, and the revision is the real work, and the part I love the most, what I find most exciting.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So thinking also about process, maybe this will be our last questions. It's actually combining a couple of questions, I guess, but what do you still struggle with when it comes to process, the creative process, including drafting and revising, I suppose? And another person had a question about like thinking of challenges. What advice would you give to your former self or to a young writer who's just starting out? And when it comes to those kinds of challenges. So just first was thinking about like, what are still some challenges that you run into when it comes to the creative process and how do you overcome them? Jill, do you want to start us off maybe?
Sure. I think the advice that I would give my young self, is to not worry so much about the big mess, and the making mistakes. I mean, I think our society somewhere along, people started, the fear of failure has never been so high. And yet there's so much to be learned from trying something and failing, and then coming back and trying to do it again. I've always liked the analogy. It might have been Welty, who talks about going as far out on a limb as you can go without it snapping. and so there is that risk and sort of daring to go before you start worrying about what other people will say or think, and start self-editing. And I think one of the biggest challenges for me remains, the whole issue of getting that good writing time, and also feeling like you very much have a foot in life, and participating as a citizen, and just being present. At times it does feel like occupying two worlds at the same time. And so my challenge is, there's sometimes, like during this pandemic, I would love nothing better than to move into a novel, lock, stock, and barrel, and just stay there. But life, I think finding that balance between life on the page and life, in the world, and being and your responsibilities to both. I do feel I have responsibilities in both places. So that's my challenge, the juggle, finding time for all of it.
Oh, that's great advice. And I think it's a huge concern with all I students and all writers. Tim, would you like to add on to that with your own?
In terms of what would I tell my younger self?
Sure.
I think Jill had talked about this a little earlier about her belief in revision. I think if I could go back to my 22-year-old self, right after I finished college, I was writing poems. I was writing. I loved to write, so I was writing, but I was, writing using maybe 3 or 4 drafts in terms of revision. And luckily, pretty quickly, in a few years, I realized that's just not adequate. You just need more time to really find the center of a poem. And so one thing I would tell my younger self would be patient, revise as long as it requires. Don't try to set a limit on how many drafts you need or anything, which is, now I look at it and it seems funny. But then, I really didn't do many more than 3 or 4 drafts. 5 would be wild, And then as I got older, now that I'm older, if I feel a poem is finished within 12 to 14 drafts, that's a pretty rare thing, So I draft a lot more, and I take more time between drafts. And I think, as I said earlier, because I think a little more about composition than I once did. I'm asking more of myself, and I'm trying to be truer to the best aspect of my writerly mind. I'm trying to be true to that and not be lazy and not rush to finish, which is also something I would be telling my younger self. Don't be so invested in finishing. Just write a good poem. The other thing I tell my younger self, of course, which would be to read even more than I read. I read a good bit when I was in my early 20s, but I think I would say read even more, read even more people, think even harder about what they're doing. But those would be the big things: revision, patience, and read, and really invest your time in reading.
Oh man. No, you both have great advice for giving perspective to the writing life. And I really appreciate you guys being here and taking time out of your day to read to us and share your words. It's been an honor.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I love hearing Jill McCorkle. I've heard you before, of course, but
I just wish we could have been there in person.
I agree. So we could actually hang out a little bit. I agree. Now, I've heard you read before, but I just, this is a different kind of reading. I take great pleasure in what you do. And I love fiction. I just love it anyway.
Same. And I love poetry. I send my fiction writers to read poetry all the time because
yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I aspire to be a poet. What's the thing Faulkner said? We all want to be poets and we fail, so we write stories. Or you fail, you write a novel.
I don't believe it,
but the language, the rhythm, it's music. I read poetry and learn so much
Yeah, and I would say exactly the reverse. I tell my students all the time, read everything. Read, there are novelists who and fiction writers who write beautifully. You can learn so much about what they're doing in terms of detail and description and voice. You know, there's so much you can learn. And that's why it really bugs me when people get over specialized and all I do is read short stories. I only read poems. You
Exactly.
know, it's like, it's ridiculous. There's so much to learn, you know, and so I'm all about it. And you can hear all kinds of music in beautiful fiction. I mean, there are some wonderful passages in fiction that are they just ring as musically as anything in a poem, you know? And I think there's this wonderful overlap between genres, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, plays. I mean, you name it. There's so much, there's overlap. And I think you can learn from all of it. And that'd be the other thing I would tell my younger self.
And me too. Me too. And not to be afraid. I would have said, don't be afraid of poetry.
Right. Yeah. Luckily, I wasn't afraid of poems, but I just wish I'd read more poetry and more novels and more, you know, everything, you know.
Well, we learned a lot from you guys today, and from the chat. I know everybody's taking notes at home, hopefully, and I really appreciate you sharing your words of wisdom with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mark.
Mark.
Such an honor to be here.
Absolutely. And Jill, always a pleasure to be anywhere in the vicinity of your work.
Absolutely. I will look forward to next time.
Okay. All right. Okay, next time in person.
Yes.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.